Hey, I'm Becky Brinkman. I'm the Fuqua Orchid Center manager, and today we're going to repot an orchid. Repotting orchids is really easy. If you've got enough dexterity to make dinner, you can repot an orchid. And you don't need a fancy setup. This is just a piece of plywood with two plastic sawhorses underneath. There are two things that would motivate you to repot your orchid. One is if the orchid has outgrown its pot, like this cattleya with all the roots over the top, or this phalaenopsis, which is just crammed full of roots inside. The other reason you would want to repot your orchid is if the soil mix has broken down. And if you look inside here, you can see that the mix is quite broken down. And what happens is it starts to hang on to too much moisture. And that is a very bad thing for an orchid. In nature, most tropical orchids live in a tree, and the root system dries out very frequently. And so to stay wet all the time is a really bad thing. So you want to repot about every 2 years. That's about how long a good orchid mix lasts. First thing you want to do is gather your materials. You need clean pots of different sizes, and you don't know which size you're going to use until you get the plant out of the pot. So round up all your clean pots. You'll need a clean, sharp cutting tool. We use single-edged razor blades, but you can also use a clean, sterile pair of pruners. And you'll need a soil mix that's appropriate for orchids. For the phalaenopsis that we're repotting today, you can either use premium sphagnum moss, which is available online from lots of sources, or you can use sort of the classic orchid mix, which is a mixture of bark, charcoal, and perlite. We're going to remove the bamboo stakes that are supporting the old spikes. Most phalaenopsis that you buy at the store in flower will come with those bamboo stakes, and we don't need those anymore, so we're just going to discard those. In fact, they're kind of in the way at this point. And that will allow us to cut these spikes, which we don't need anymore. So now I'm going to take a razor blade, which is what we use as a cutting tool here at the garden, because we like a sterile, sharp blade. And I like to make a cut either right at the base where the spike meets the plant stem, or alternatively, you can make a cut right above this lowermost band. If you make the cut there, the plant will possibly produce a second flush of flowers for you. There's a dormant bud underneath that band of tissue, and that's where the new spike will come from. So next we're going to remove the plant from the pot. I'm going to invert it and gently tap the rim of the pot on the side of the trash can, and it comes right out. The roots for two reasons. It's good for removing the nasty old stuff that's around the roots, and it also helps me to see the roots clearly afterwards so that I can remove the bad ones. All right, so now that I've washed away the old mix, it's easy to see which roots are good and which ones need to be removed. So I'm going to take my razor blade now and cut away the bad ones, and you can tell which ones are good and which ones are bad visually, right? Here's a nice healthy root. And then this is the type that needs to be removed, right? It just sort of collapses under your fingers. So I'm just going to take my blade and cut away the nasty bits. Until all that's left are nice healthy roots. That looks pretty good. So now we're going to pick the right size pot. It's important to choose the right size pot, and the right size pot is based on the size of the roots, not the top growth. And choosing the right one is kind of like trying on different shoes. You start out with some that are too small, too big, that's way too big, until you finally find one that's going to be a good fit. And orchids like to be a little bit underpotted. They don't want to be swimming in a huge pot, so I'm going to go with this one. So the next thing you do is you hold on to the plant with your left hand, if you're right-handed, and hold it in place with the crown of the plant above the rim of the pot. Hold it with your left hand in the center of the pot, and then start to fill in with the orchid mix with your right hand. And that's pretty much what your plant should look like. The soil level is almost at the rim of the pot, and the crown is well above the rim, and you can see some new roots coming out. We like that. And I'm just going to do a little bit of cleanup now. There are a few broken roots here that the plant doesn't really need. And that's it.